So I'm excited to introduce Rick Clark as our keynote speaker. Rick is a fifth-generation farmer who cares deeply about both soil and human health. The principles of soil health are the foundation of his regenerative organic stewardship systematic approach. Rick is building a regenerative system that is profitable and viable for the next generation. So please welcome Rick Clark.
Thank you so much. Welcome. All right. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be in the great state of Michigan. Thank you yeah. There you go. I'm honored to be here today. I do have a presentation today, but this is about you guys. What would you like for me to do? You want to do 45 minutes of Q&A, or you want to do a presentation? What do you want? Whatever. Presentation? All right. This is the slide that I start with all my presentations with. This is my immediate family. This is what you have to have in your core group. You have to have everyone in this group is with you. They have your back, and they're on the same journey path that you're on. Everyone in that picture has my back, and that allows me to move out and take my mind in places that usually unconventional wisdom would take you. So I greatly appreciate that. A little bit about our farm. We've been no-tilling soybeans for 21 years. We've been no-tilling corn for 16, cover crops for 16 years, farming green for 14 years. Farming green, to me, is planting your cash crop into a green growing living cover crop and then terminating it mechanically after the fact. So that's what we've tried to do. It's very difficult. It's very hard. Epigenetics for 6 years. I'm going to talk about this. I think this is the future. And basically when I came up with this epigenetics notion, it was about trying to remember things that we've all forgotten, and that's basically what we're all doing now. I have not invented anything new. I don't do anything that hasn't already been done in the years past. I'm just trying to help remember what we've forgotten, because if you think about how our ancestors would have farmed, they would have taken a parcel of land and put it into four pieces, and they would have had a wheat crop, they would have had a soybean crop, a clover crop, and a corn crop, and they would have rotated that. And that's how they would have done the farming, and they were raising the nitrogen that the corn crop needs. So there was no fertilizer in the beginning of farming. So we're trying to remember how that was all done. Biostimulants now for 3 years, and we have on-site bioreactors, which are Johnson-Sioux reactors. Anybody know what that is? Anybody know what a Johnson-Sioux reactor is? One or two people? Okay. We'll talk about that. 9-crop system we have at home. Most of our neighbors, if not all, farm 2 crops, corn and soybeans. At home, we're up to 9. Corn, soybeans, wheat, alfalfa, peas, buckwheat, cover crops, milo, sheep, and cattle. And a +1 is what I call regen. And regen is when you take an acre of production, or take an acre out of production. And I know this seems hard to imagine, how you can take an acre out of production, not get any income off that field. But typically when this happens, you do this because your field has gotten out of step. We're in what I call a northern state. This is cold. You're cold here. You get cold early. It's hard to get a cover crop planted for next year's cash crop. I get all that. I get that. But it can be done. We'll talk about it in just a little bit. 5,600 acres certified organic, and the remainder of the acres are in transition. We've used no starter fertilizers or fungicides, seed treatments, insecticides, or P or K in the last 11 years. No ag lime in 11 years. And I know there's more to soil pH than just ag lime, but our pH is at 6.9 to 7, and it's been right there for the last 5 or 6 years. because when you take the salts and the acids away, you don't need, your pH doesn't move, and that's what we've done. So no nitrogen has been applied in 6 years, and this is all about balance. It's a symbiotic relationship with Mother Nature. You're not going to be able to do the previous slide unless you have balance. And you cannot leave this conference today hearing me speak and think you're going to go home tomorrow and take all your fertilizer away. It doesn't work like that. It's taken us years to get to this point. We've been on this journey for 18 or 19 years. I didn't realize it was called regenerative back then, but that's the name they've given it today. That's fine. It'll be something different tomorrow, I'm sure. But it's about balance. And one of the things that we do continually on our farm is we still take soil samples and we take soil tests. We don't do the traditional soil sample. We haven't done that in several years. We do a Haney test. It's a soil health test. It was developed by Rick Haney. He used to work for the USDA, and he developed this test, and this is the test that we use now. And when you're in the growing season, we will try to accompany that with a SAP test, S-A-P, a SAP test. And then you get a very good, and if you want to add a third one, which anybody in the room can do any of these things I'm mentioning. I don't care if you grow corn or beans or if you grow vegetables. I don't care. The bricks test. You can do the bricks test. So all of these things will show you how you are or are not in balance. It helps. But we got to remember, any test that we take is a snapshot of time. So if you took a test of your soil today, well, maybe not today, it's a little cold. If you took a test of your soil in May, and then you came back 4 weeks later and took another test, you better see different results. Because if you're not, there's something wrong. Because your soil is a living, dynamic system that is changing all the time. So what we do is we take this data and we plot it in an Excel spreadsheet, and we have a graph. I'm not caring what that test said today. I'm caring about what's the trend. What is the trend of organic nitrogen? What's the trend of organic carbon? What's the trend of inorganic nitrogen? So there's a lot of tests that you can do out there that are all fancy schmancy, and some work and some don't. But if you look at the trend of what's happening on your farm after you've baselined it, you'll know if what you're doing is working or not. So for example, if you were in a high fertility, high tillage system, and it's going to be on this test, the Haney test, it'll give you 30 or 35 different results. And one of these is what I'm getting ready to talk about. If you're in a high tillage, high fertility system, your inorganic carbon is going to be sky high, and your organic carbon is going to be non-existent, very little. When you start making these principal changes, you will see that shift. You will see inorganic carbon coming down and organic carbon rising, because you're taking away the inorganic carbon. You're giving your system the ability to start creating the organic carbon. Now, organic carbon is good and bad, or nitrogen. Organic nitrogen is good and bad. Organic nitrogen is very stable in the ground. It's not going anywhere unless the soil leaves. But it's not the form that your plant wants, so it takes time to break down. So we got to be careful we don't go too far. We've got to be in balance. Okay? 6 principles of soil health. This is what our whole system is built around. Minimize disturbance. This is meaning minimizing disturbance of tillage and minimizing disturbance of chemistry. That's what this means. So we have to understand what this means. And I don't know how many of you know who I am or you don't know who I am. It doesn't matter. But I have pounded the table hard for years on no-till. Hard. And I think I've pounded too hard, because it's extremely difficult to be a purist. And that's what I've been trying to do. I mean, I'm talking about organic, with no chemistry, no tillage, no nothing. We're out here trying to do this with working with Mother Nature, growing cover crops. The cover crops feed the crops we're raising. They suppress weeds, all of these things, but this is very, very difficult. So we have to learn, and I've got this coming up on another slide, but I'll just say it now. We've got to learn that we've got to meet people where you are. How can we help you? You know, I'm over here taking everything away, and there's folks over here that are just getting started with the journey. Let's meet right here in the middle somewhere and figure out what can we do that works for your livelihood, your farm, your risk tolerance, all of these things. And we can do that. Maximize diversity. That's what I'm all about. You have to maximize diversity through cash crops you raise. I mean, we're raising 9 crops now. You have to have diversity in your cover crops you use. You have to have diversity in your lifestyle, in the life you live, the people that you surround yourself with. All of this is diversity. It's very, very important. I always say if you have negative people around you, you've got to get different people because negative people drag you down. You cannot afford to be drugged down. You have to be able to think with a clear mind. That's like that first slide. They have my back. It's all positive. Living roots. Try to have a living root as many days as possible. At home right now, I mean, here, I apologize. I should have told you where I'm from. West Central Indiana. So everybody knows where Champaign, Illinois is. Just come straight across Indiana and go north about 15 miles. That's where we are. We farm both Indiana and Illinois. We've got a lot of cover crops that were planted last fall, a lot of cereal grains, a lot of rye. And when you get a day that gets into the 40s, you'll see those rye fields green up, and they start growing again. And then when it gets back into the 20s, they go back into dormancy. Then it warms up, they grow again. That's a living root. It is continually feeding those microbes. They like to eat just like we do. So we got to continually feed them. Armor the soil. You've done all these great things. You've gotten increased water holding capacity. You've increased soil organic matter. You've increased water infiltration rates. You've done all these things. And if you don't have an armor on the soil, meaning you don't have like the residue of that cover crop, a thatch or a mulch, whatever you want to call it, protecting the soil, evaporation is going to take place. Your moisture is going up into the sky. And if the ground temp gets over 104 or 5 degrees, you're killing most, if not all, microbes. So it's a real step backwards. So we have to do whatever it takes to try and keep the soil armored. Context. Where are you not only in the world, where are you in the journey? Where are you with the amount of risk you can take? How thick is your skin? All these things matter because we're talking about farming differently than mainstream farming is done today. And sometimes we get viewed a little differently. Livestock. This is not a deal breaker, but this is a way to really move the soil health needle in a hurry. If you want to build soil health, the quickest way and the most efficient way, it's with livestock. Now, livestock's not for everybody. Sometimes the best livestock is your neighbor's livestock. And you ask them to work out a plan to get them for 45, 60, 90 days, whatever, and then let them take them back home and let them keep them alive in the wintertime. That works great. Are there any dairies in the room? Dairy farmers? No. Couple? Just a couple? I have not succeeded at this yet at home, but I want to get those yearling heifers that are coming back into your dairy. I want them to come and graze for 90 days. Let them put on some weight on the hoof, walking around, grazing, and then return them back. I will get there one day, but it's not happening yet. I still keep doing it. But that's what I envision, something like that. And if I could add one more, it's commitment. You need to be committed to do this. This is difficult. I mean, what we're doing is difficult. Starting these regenerative practices are not difficult. It depends on how far you want to take this. So we got to be committed. Thoughts to be aware of. Cocktail packages are prescribed for weed problems. This is the future. We are doing this now in a small scale, but this is going to be the future. You're going to sit down with an agronomist or a soil health expert or somebody like that, and you're going to answer a series of questions, and you're going to tell them what's your crop rotations, what's your cover crop packages look like, how much diversity have you had, what's your fertility program, what are the 3 weeds that you have problems with, and they're going to then prescribe a certain cocktail package of certain species that have those exudates that create an environment that those weeds do not want to germinate in. Okay, I know this seems out there, but this is happening now. We do it on our farm and I don't even know it. Because when I think back through the years of farming, 19 was mare's tail outbreak, 20 was giant ragweed, 21 was water hemp. It was never the same weed year after year after year. Why? Because there were certain triggers that were made through Mother Nature that said it's okay for you to germinate this year. What's the goal of every organism on this planet? It has one goal: procreate. And if that weed seed does not have a conducive environment to procreate, it will not germinate and grow. And that's what we're going to do. This is going to have to be, because the day is coming that chemistry will be it will be greatly reduced, and some is going to be eliminated. So the way farming is going to have to change. This is one way it's going to happen. Nutrient density goes up as soil health goes up. We've proven it. We test our crops. There are no failures. Remember, I told you I don't like that negative people around you. Well, failure is a negative word. And if you go through your growing season of 2025, let's say, and you have to make 18 different decisions, or 20 or 30, whatever, you start to feel like, what am I doing wrong? I can't do anything right anymore. Well, that's okay, because this thing is moving all the time. 2 years ago, I had 38 plans. That's okay. It's okay. We came out the other side, and everything was fine. Carbon markets will require soil health practices. They better. Right now, there is no carbon market that is worth being in my opinion. There was one that was coming that I thought was going to maybe work, but the government did not give the rules that were needed for carbon intensity, so it has kind of put the brakes on. But when they get to the point of where they can finally get a market, it's going to require the principles of soil health. Do not underestimate the power of what's in this room right now. The networking that's in here is incredible. Is there anybody in the room that has been no-tilling for 30 years? Anybody? I don't care where I go. He's right back there. I don't care where I go. I ask this question everywhere I go, and there's always somebody in the room, if not 2 or 3, that have been no-tilling for 30 years. How many years? 30. Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's what I mean. There's somebody in here that's been doing this a long time. Find them, ask them questions. Unfortunately, a farmer's success is measured by yield. It's most unfortunate. Human health, soil health. Are you socially accepted in your community? Now, sometimes I wonder about that one. There's many ways. There's many ways to be measured by success. So, unfortunately, that is all about yield, and that seems to be the driving factor right now, is how much yield can we produce. Systematic biology approach running parallel to your systematic regenerative approach. This is the one area that I failed in when we started. And I just said I don't use the word failure, I just used it. This is the outcome I did not expect. We should have started a systematic biological program running parallel when we started the transition of moving deeper into the regenerative and going organic, okay? And we didn't do that. I had the arrogance to think that we could grow our own biology, which we did, and we do, but it was too slow. It happened too slow because think about most of the microbial families that are in the soil profile. Their jobs have been taken away from them. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria have no job when you pour on copious amounts of synthetic nitrogen. So they either die or they lay there and they just go dormant and they do nothing. Well, then you can't expect them to all of a sudden come back to their job right as soon as you take everything away. So it takes time. That's where we needed to have this biological approach. We need to meet people where they are. I just talked about that a little bit ago. I don't care where you are on the journey. What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? What's the goal? How far do you want to take this? I'll give you my recipe right now for when we were generating the largest ROI on the farm, so return on investment. And that's what it's all about. I mean, General Motors doesn't build cars just to build cars. They build cars to make money. So we should be thinking about farming the same way. So here it is. We were 100% non-GMO, 100% cover crop, 100% no-till, and 70% reduction of inputs. 70. Can everybody in this room get to 70%? I don't know. But I can just about guarantee everybody in this room can get to 35 or 40% reduction of inputs and see no loss in income. I didn't say yield. I said income. That's where you have to make the difference. Cocktails should be built using multiple families. There's probably 200, 220 or so families of plants. Trees and bushes and shrubs make up a lot of that, so you can knock out a bunch. You're down to probably 50 families that we could plant in our fields. And you have to understand what is your termination going to be. If you're going to use chemistry, then you ought to be using every family possible because the chemistry will terminate those. But I don't use chemistry, so I have to be careful what families I use. But if you like to listen to webinars, you might want to write this down. Green Cover Seed has a webinar series, and they have a 4-parter with Dr. Christine Jones from Australia. She is absolutely amazing. She's the queen of ecology in the world. And she has one of those 4-part series is about growing crops that require nitrogen with zero nitrogen and very little legumes. It's all about multiple families. Collecting good data is critical to success. If you're going to start down this road, or if you already have started, the first thing we got to do is baseline the farm. Where is the farm today? Take your fields and get as much information down as you can. What are we adding for fertilizer? What are we doing here? What's the chemistry? Because if you start taking things away, you need to know if what you're doing is working or not. So baseline your farm, get your data in line, and start thinking. I mean, what we did, I was asked to go to Argentina and consult. Went down there to the Pampas. It's beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go sometime. The land down there is so flat, you can see 25 miles in every direction. It's unreal. But anyway, we came up with a grid that had zero reduction, 10%, 20%, 40%, and I think 60%. And they duplicated that grid across the farms. So then they made the grids be the alleys were the same width as the equipment they're using. So once they got lined up in the field right, they didn't care, they didn't need flags. It was all done GPS. It was all pointed out on the map, and they just farmed like they would farm. And then when they got through harvesting everything, they went back to look at the yield data, and they looked at not which plots had the best yield, but which ones made the most money. And it was like 28 or 30% reduction of inputs. So by using this grid across thousands of hectares, they came up with the number that they were going to reduce inputs. I mean, the size of the farms I was on, these folks were spending $20 million on inputs. I mean, these farms are huge. Fields down there are 5,000 acres. A field. There's no roads. Here in the U.S., our roads are about a mile apart. They're 10 miles apart. So you take 30% off of $20 million, that's a big deal. So it's all about collecting data. Educate your landlords. Most, if not all, will be supportive. When I went to all of our landlords about going organic, okay, we had already been regenerative. We were already doing the things I said, the no-till, the cover crop, the 70% reduction. We were already doing that. But when I told them I had this crazy notion of organic, the response from everyone was, how quick can you get there? We're behind you 100%. You need to view the cover crop as important as the cash crop. I mean, earlier I gave you the crops that we raise, and I know I've already said this, that we're in a northern state, and I know it's hard to get a cover crop established here, but I gave you 3 ways in our crop rotation to get a cover crop established in a timely manner. I'll give them to you again. One of them was we planted a cereal grain, and you do not double crop anything behind that cereal grain. You have the rest of the growing season to get a cover crop planted. Number 2 was livestock. You call that dairy, you get those replacement heifers to come in until the 1st of August, and they leave. You got 65 to 90 good growing days left in the season here in Michigan to get a cover crop to grow. And the third one was regen. Now regen, I know that's hard because you're taking an acre out of production. I know that. But when you stop looking at what the single year ROI is on a field and you look at what your new rotation is going to be, our rotation is like 6 years now to come around to another crop, I hope. Sometimes that changes. Well, it changes all the time. But when you look at what we've been able to accomplish on our farm, we have aggregate stability 12 inches deep now. I mean, it's the depth of a spade. You can just about anywhere put the spade right to the where your foot beat on the ground. We have water infiltration rates of over 20 inches an hour. So we can take a 20-inch rain event in an hour and it all goes in the ground. We have earthworm counts of over 2 million per acre. I mean, these are the things that we can do when we start to take away the things that kill all this. Viewed as an outlier, you will be. I mean, you got to have thick skin because this is not the norm. Continue to soil test. Do whatever you can to have a cover crop on every acre. I know that's hard. I know it's hard. And when you get to the end of the season, you don't have very many choices. You've got cereal rye and you've got cold tolerant peas for nitrogen. We plant cold tolerant peas in December at home. They'll survive the winter. They'll survive the winter here, and they'll come out next spring and they'll be growing with your crop to give you nitrogen. I mean, if I was a dairy, I'd be having that. I'd have annual ryegrass. I'd have a pea. Those are the 2 main things I'd have. Triticale. I'd have those 3 main things in every forage diet. Because your protein's going to go way up. Do not get hung up on yield. Be patient. The soil starts to change at about year 3. I mean, it'll change pretty quick, but you really see that tilth come back after year 3. So just be patient. Establish a baseline to monitor change. I've already driven that into the ground. Delta Force. This is an attachment you put on your planter. And it doesn't have to be Delta Force, just some kind of a hydraulic lifting and pushing down is what this is. And we use precision, so that's why I talk Delta Force. And in that app, it's ran by your iPad, and in that app, there is a category called Applied Downforce. So what they've done is they've taken the weight of the row unit, which on a John Deere row unit is about 210 pounds, I think. I'm not sure what a Case IH or anybody else is, but John Deere is about 210 pounds. So when you set the planter down just on its own, that's 210 pounds of downforce just sitting there, okay? The applied downforce does the math between where you've got your target set and the weight of that row unit, and when we are going through the field planting and you go to the applied downforce, we are always running negative numbers. That means the delta force is lifting the row unit to plant, not pushing down. That's why I recommend the hydraulic, because your springs or your air are not going to do that. They're not going to pick you back up. So when you get to that kind of tilth and aggregate stability and everything is getting mellow, you are lifting that unit through the field. I've seen minus 350 before, 350 pounds. Test on your own farm. Just don't take my word for it. Test on your farm. Is it going to work for you? Small acres, small. Remember, the people who are being talked about are the ones who are creating the change. Change is good. Change is good. Yeah. You will only be criticized by someone who's doing less than you. Remember that. I get trashed online a lot. And that's okay. That's what drives me. You want to tell me you can't do something, that's about all the motivation I need to make it happen. Stop looking at single-year ROI, take the average. Do not jeopardize the livelihood of the farm. Please do not leave here today thinking that, wow, we're backed into the corner here. We got a little financial burden, the bank's on our back. You know what? We're going to just take away all the fertilizer this year and raise a crop. It's not going to work. Please do not jeopardize the livelihood of your farm. Start easy, start small. There's probably some vegetable folks in the room. That's tough. It's tough to do the cover crops and the no-till. I don't even know if it's possible. I've tried in different parts of the world to help. It's hard. When you've got a crop that requires a clean seed bed to really get established and grow, or if you're raising a potato that is absolute mass destruction at harvest time, those are the things that we have to try to understand how to work through. I guess what we have to try to do is I don't know what your rotation on potatoes is, 3, 4, 5 years. We got to try to keep that as maximum as we can, and then in between those times of potatoes, we're doing the regenerative practices. So, vegetables are hard. Do not get into a monoculture with cover crops. It's just as bad as a monoculture with the cash crop. Don't make excuses that support your agenda. We all do this. We all make excuses that will support whatever it is we think we need to be doing. Need to stop that. Okay. Epigenetics. Take a read on that if you would. Heritable phenotype changes that do not involve alterations in the DNA sequence. These phenotypic trait changes may result from external or environmental factors or be part of normal development. What in the world does that mean? This goes back to when I was a young boy, 14 years old or so, and I remember helping Dad, and it was a nice fall day, 75 degrees, clear sky. The beans are ready. They're testing 12%. And Dad says, go grab the 2 wagons out of the barn, bring them out, and we're going to get our seed beans for next year. Now, remember, this is in the 70s, so this was legal to take beans out of your bin. I said, Dad, why are we doing this? We've got a seed company right down the road from us. Let's just buy our seed from them. Well, son, let me explain to you what we're doing here. We are going to save the seed because the seed is adapting to our system. It's adapting to our environment right here. Okay, I really don't know what that means at 14 years old. I know what it means now. And we've been doing this for 6 years. We went to Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, and there is a building there that is owned by the USDA, and it houses every seed known to man and woman, every seed. They've even got farmers in the area that when the supply gets low, they give seed to them and they restock the supply. So we go in and we get to the soybean catalog and we go through the catalog and we identify and buy 10 varieties of soybeans that are off patent. Off patent. That's critical here. We do know, everyone in the room knows you cannot bin run a GMO soybean, right? That's a no-brainer. Do we know we can't bin run a non-GMO soybean? Do we know that? Well, Rick, there's no traits on a non-GMO soybean. Why would that matter? The seed companies got smart and they patented the genetics. So you cannot bin run a non-GMO bean. So we went and found beans that were off patent, bought them, and we created our own soybean line. Epigenetics. We're going into year 6 or 7 now on that. So it's real, and I mean, it's real. It is adjusting and adapting. What we did was we took the 10 and we quickly went to 5 because the other 5 just weren't going to work in our system. I could see it. Then when it came time to where we had enough years of this involved to where we had 40 acres planted, we got to the point where I said, I don't know what variety is going to be the best variety in our system, so I'm just going to harvest them all together. We created a land race. And now you can see it change. We have a group 2 to a group 3.2 in this mix of 5 varieties. And the group 2 is the only tawny bean in the group. So they're easy to find. They're like orange out there in the field. Those are getting to be less and less prevalent every year because the system is telling what it wants to be there. That's pretty good information, really, because if we were to continue to plant those 2.0s as a single line variety, the yields are probably going to be going down because Mother Nature's telling us that our system wants something different. Who am I to decide what it wants? Put them all together and let it decide. That's what we're doing. We're doing the same thing with corn. We are raising our own seed corn. We are doing it. We're going to raise everything. We're not going to buy anything. I don't want to buy anything. I don't want to buy the latest genetics. The latest genetics don't work on our farm. The genetics are being bred for high fertility, high tillage. We don't do any of that. So why would I want to plant it? We keep our cover crops. Well, we don't keep all of it, but we keep whatever's legal and whatever we can deal with. And what I mean by dealing with is this thing right here. That clipper cleaner is the same age as I am. Made in 1964. And it still hums like a sewing machine. This is where we got to get to. We try very hard to not raise a single species cash crop. We're going to plant a pea or a soybean with every cereal grain. Every one. We're trying to come up with like faba beans to plant with corn. Now, this is where you get creative. What's your market? I'm going to pick on the dairy guys again. If I came to those dairy guys with a corn kernel that had a faba bean in it, and I could show them that the protein was increased by 2%, 3%, they would probably say, don't run that through the clipper cleaner, bring it to me as a combination, as a co-mingled cash crop. Same thing, again, the dairy, same thing. We raise this right here. And what we do to this maslin is we add the peas to the maslin, a cold-tolerant pea in the fall, and then next spring, when the peas and the wheat will mature about the same time. They're not quite the same, but it's pretty close. We'll harvest the two together, and we will ship that co-mingled crop to the dairy as a feed source. Again, a different source of protein and a higher source of protein. Now, they got to talk to their nutritionist, and they got to figure out how to get that into the diet. But that's okay. Do it all the time. This right here is what I think about diversity. Remember, I told you I'm all about diversity, and I know this is a reach, but when you're right here in Michigan, and it's November the 1st, there's not very many things we can plant. Wheat, cereal grain, rye, barley. So I thought, okay, instead of just having cereal rye only, we're going to plant a combination of rye, barley, and wheat. And I didn't know what it was called, but we'd been doing this for about 3 years, and I was sitting down at dinner with my wife one night, and I was explaining to her what we're doing, what we've been doing for 3 years. And can you imagine that the next day, that little thing right there on the table that most everyone has one of, in my Facebook feed is an article on maslins. Why in the world would that show up? And I get to reading this, I'm like, this is what we were talking about last night. So this is an ancient way of mixing cereals together, and they actually ground the three together, or four. They would have put triticale with maybe, or whatever else would have been available. Probably not triticale, but some ancient grain. And then they would have made their flour, and then they would have made their bread out of the combination of all of that. So that's what I'm talking about. When we can raise a crop that does not require that clipper cleaner, and you can find a market for that, go for it. And it gives you that synergy in the field. You're going to get a good yield on the wheat or the rye, and you're going to get a good yield on the pea. I mean, the pea, in my opinion, should never be planted by itself anyway. It'll just go flat. So put something out there that it can grab a hold of. It's got those things that go out and wrap around everything. Give it something to wrap around and hold it up. Johnson-Su bioreactor. This is what one looks like. I know it sounds like an evil thing when you say it's a bioreactor, but what's happening here, what I really like about this is you are building this reactor out of components that are from your farm or from your area. So that is an IBC tote. You take that plastic bladder out. You wrap it with the garden lining. And that particular reactor right there is full of oak tree leaves from my father's farm. And when that decomposes, you see where that gray tape line is? That's about where it'll decompose down to. And you got to follow the rules. Go online. Just Google Johnson-Su. David Johnson is the husband, and Mrs. Su is I can't remember her first name's hard for me to say, is the wife, so it's called Johnson-Su reactor. And Google that. They'll tell you how to build one. They'll tell you how to do it. They'll tell you to do everything. Then you just get an extractor, and you extract the biology out of what's left. And then if you really want to maximize what this will do for you is you seed treat with it. Because that's how you get across many acres. You're not, if we were going to in-furrow 5 gallons to the acre, we would need 100 of those on a farm our size, maybe 150. That's a lot of maintenance. But you take that across our farm, you can probably do 2 of those or maybe 3 and seed treat everything. So you've got the biology on the seed, and now it's ready to rock and roll. That's what I was talking about how I did not get the biology introduced soon enough. Okay? This is how we plant soybeans at home. Look at the date, April 27th. So this is not a date thing. This is a growth stage thing. So what you're looking for is boot stage on the rye. And typically at home, now here, I don't know how much behind you guys are here, maybe a week, 10 days, I'm not sure. But typically at home, boot stage is around that April 25th to May 1st window. It's not a date thing. You got to go out and observe. But then the reason why this works, so I've got like 3 or 4 slides in a row here, and this is the same field, okay? It's the same field, just different, just time. June the 2nd. Now we roll it down. Now there's beans in there. The beans are about this tall. You can't get past V3 or you'll break roots or break stems, break branches, rip leaves off, and then you'll be cussing me for ever showing you this video. So don't go beyond V2. Now right there, that dust coming off, that's the pollen. That's not from the field, that's the pollen. So that's anthesis. So the reason why this works is that the time frame from boot stage to anthesis is about 40 days. And that time period, the bean will not be over V3. So if you go before boot stage, you're going to run the risk of the beans being too big. So if you do anything, you go after boot stage, okay? The other thing I want you to notice is there's no weeds. In this time of year, we are very clean. That's a field that hasn't had any chemistry on it for 10 years. It's been no-till for 15 years. So it's amazing what you can do when you get the cover crop going. I've got a 70-30 rule. 70% of the weed suppression is from the cocktail that you plant, and 30% is from the cash crop canopy, or the canopy of the cereal rye. Same field, July 19th. Now, I'm not asking everyone in this room to do this. That's not what I'm saying, to go organic and do this. But here's what I am saying. Look at the date. July 19th, and we've spent zero money to this point. No burn down, no post-spray, and the beans are at closing. We're on 20-inch row spacing. Those beans are getting close to closing. Is this field perfect? No. You see the grass is starting to come. There's a little pocket of mare's tail. There's going to be weeds. I guarantee it. But we haven't made any financial decisions to this point, except planting the cover crop and buying the seed and planting the cash crop, which you do anyway. Now, sometimes we have to roll with Mother Nature. I believe this was 19, don't quote me on that. Doesn't matter what year it was. But we had rain every single day in April and May. Well, this is the first day we got into the field, right here. So I decided that the rye was already at anthesis, so let's just roll it down first, and then we're going to plant right behind it. That is an I&J roller crimper. I mean, this is absolutely nuts. Look at that. That rye is flat, and folks, in 5 days it'll be brown. It's dead. So why in the world would you ever put any chemistry on that? You don't need to. And as you can see, the planter goes through, and there's no disc, there's no row cleaners, there's no coulter. It's a double disc opener and a closing system. And you really have to look and see where the planter even really drove through there. Same field on July 16th. Does every field look like this? No, they do not. Now I'm going to explain the importance of timing of planting the cover crop. This particular field, the cover crop, the previous fall was planted in early September. I could take you down the road for 5 miles down the road and it would be an absolute nightmare. The weeds are coming, the cash crop is getting swallowed up. It looks like a lot of those organic fields, if you've ever gone to an organic field day or you've ever driven by an organic farmer that's local, sometimes fields get out of control. That's what that field would look like. That cover crop would have been planted in November. That's how important this is to get the cover crop planted at a timely fashion in the fall. Same field, October 17th. It's okay. There's a few weeds out there. I mean, I can live with that. That's no chemistry, that's no till, that's cover crop, and away we go. Input reductions from 11 to 23. We've reduced diesel fuel by 46%. We've reduced horsepower by 64%. I didn't use any fancy schmancy formula. I just lined up the tractors and I said, okay, that's a 320, that's a 310, that's a 285, and you add all those up and that's the horsepower. And we just started chucking horsepower because you don't need it. So the fuel savings is two things: the decrease in horsepower and the minimization of trips across the field. We're trying to make 3 trips. No-till cover crop planting in the fall, no-till planting of the cash crop in the spring, and roller crimp. That's what we're trying to do. Then zeros on all these, okay? These are all averages. This is what it means. This is the savings in dollar amount. The savings of fuel is this: synthetic N, MAP, potash, lime, chemistry, seed. We don't buy much seed anymore. So we're saving about that amount in seed, and this is what it amounts to every year. So I'm running short on time, but I've told you many times today that yield is not what drives our system. It's not. But you can begin to see why yield is not so quite as important when we're starting off with a $2.7 million head start on paying the bills. So, again, I'm not expecting anyone in this room to take everything away. That's not why I'm here. They didn't ask me to come here and tell you how to farm here in Michigan. Heaven forbid I would even dream of doing that. It's to take a couple of ideas from me. It's a couple of ideas from other speakers that are in the room today, and take them home and try this on your farm on small acres. That's all I'm asking. You know, plant a cover crop that's got a legume in it that fixes 120 pounds of free nitrogen. Take 30 units of N out of your synthetic load and let that cover crop give you the other 30 units. That's what I'm talking about. Okay? You can't do that. Oh, yes, I can. I sacrifice yield to maintain soil health every day. I'm almost done. Grow nitrogen we need with legumes or cocktails. We've already talked about that. That's the Christine Jones webinar from Green Cover Seed. Plant green into living cover crops. Plant beans into 72-inch tall rye. We've done it. Plant corn into cereal rye. You can do this, but you have to understand what's happening. The rye is a tremendous sequester of nutrients, and it does have an allelopathy effect. So when you understand all this and you plant, I mean, we used to plant corn into rye that was this tall. It was just a norm. But you have to bring nitrogen forward, because that rye is going to pull that nitrogen out. So what I mean by that is put nitrogen on with your planter, or come back behind it, side dress nitrogen, roll on some AMS. I like to use AMS in the day because all of our fields pretty much all need sulfur, and then give that corn that boost it needs to get going. So now that I'm organic and I can't apply those things, I don't do that practice anymore. We do not plant corn into rye that tall, but we used to. It's okay to have 38 plans. I talked about it earlier. Park your planter no matter the date. I don't care what your neighbors are doing. A critical component that we often overlook is compaction. Compaction is evil. It's terrible for your future outcome. It affects the microbial biome. It affects your cover crops growing into the profile. It affects your cash crops. We have to understand how detrimental compaction is. We just have to understand. Don't plant corn in April again. I hope I never do. I was in North Dakota last week speaking, and there were farmers in North Dakota that plant corn in April. How in the world do you do that? And why? I mean, if you think about North Dakota, they have a longer growing season than I have in Indiana. They do. Their season isn't longer this way, it's longer this way. They have more hours of sunlight in a day than we have in Indiana. So at the end of the year, they actually have more growing degree units than we do. Why would you plant corn in April? I don't understand that. Plant multiple cash crops in the same field. Totally eliminate all inputs. I've taken no government subsidy payments since 19. We've eliminated crop insurance in 19. And we are no longer in any government programs, ARC or PLC. I do nothing. I take zero from the government. Or the government's you. We're the government, not the people in D.C. They're just the figureheads. It's all, when people say the government, it's the taxpayers. Haven't taken any of that money. Regen acres, no cash crops, sacrifice yield to maintain soil health. I do it every single day. Every day, because if you don't maintain that, if you've got an outbreak of one pest, an armyworm or a black cutworm, and you go out and you spray a pyrethroid, you have killed 2,000 beneficial species that keep you in balance. So you're no longer in balance. I cannot get out of balance. If I get out of balance, I've got to go back and start over. I don't want to buy fertilizer ever again. So I sacrifice yield to maintain soil every single day. Build a system that increases human health. It's imperative that we make ourselves healthier. If you are not uncomfortable with what you are doing, then you are not trying hard enough to change. I challenge everyone here today to get a little uncomfortable. I think you'll like how it feels. I'm proud to be a farmer, but I'm way more proud of the way I farm. I call it regenerative organic stewardship. Thank you very much. I do have a podcast that I've taken a little hiatus on. I hope to come back to it at some point, but this is the information for that. And then if you care to ever get a hold of me, that's pretty much any and every way you can get a hold of me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rick. And with your permission,